Greetings and welcome to Oreo Nation. This is Oreo, and today we're going to discuss a little bit about the Lotus and what is currently in game for the PlayStation and the Xbox as far as her lore is concerned. Now, the reason I say this is because PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One do not have the War Within, which I'm sure has a little bit more of her lore inside it. Perhaps some things that could enlighten us to a little bit more of the mysterious Space Mom. So, let's get right down to it. So, as I've already stated, she is basically well known by the community as Space Mom. We look at her. She joins us in just about every mission we ever run. She's constantly giving us tips and telling us information that, well, for those of us who already have experience, information that we already know. Such as you must capture the target or plug me in and defend the system, things of that nature. Things that she repeats constantly throughout missions if you don't do them quick enough. So if you're, like, say, farming stars or something, and you're in a mobile defense mission, and you're opening every container that you come across, well, she's going to say, you need to plug me into the computer and defend me while I hack the system about 6 times before you actually do it. So, anyways, on to what we know about the infamous Space Mom. Now, we're going to go through 2 quest chains that basically have given us all of her lore. Well, 3 technically. She is actually inside the second dream quest as well. So we will touch base on that a little bit here in just a minute. Now, our first quest chain that goes along with her is the Nata quest line, which is, as everybody already knows, centered specifically around her. Now, up until this point, we had no idea what she was. We had no idea that the Lotus was even a real person, let alone anything that could harm us. So, when the Nata quest chain hit, there were many speculations as to what she was, from an AI to a sentient piece of software to some sort of hologram, perhaps even another cephalon such as Ortus. But in the Lotus's case, perhaps like a space station or something of that nature with a very high-powered computer interface for her to use in order to contact all of the Tenno. So, during the quest chain, we find out several things about her. First and foremost, she is actually a sentient. A piece of technology developed by the Orokin in order to make other planets and systems habitable for them. The sentients were set ahead of time to make the changes necessary for the Orokin to actually populate that particular system or planet. Now, the sentients cannot go into the void. For whatever reason, the void hurts them. I'm unsure, and if somebody knows why, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section, and perhaps I'll touch base on it in a little while. So with that being said, we also find out that her name isn't actually the Lotus. Her name is Nata. And she basically is the daughter of Hunhao. Now, how the sentients reproduce, no idea. Not sure if they just, split off a piece of themselves and give it a name and send it off, or what. But either way, her name is Nata. Her main parent is Hunhao. Now, the sentient Nata was actually sent to destroy the Orokin within the Origin system. Anything having to do with Orokin, she was sent to kill, destroy, blow up, do what she needed to do in order to eradicate them. Now, she actually completed most of that task with the help of the Tenno and their warframes, something that we will get in touch with in a different video, because the Tenno and the warframes, that's just a conversation for another time. So Nata basically completes probably about 90% of her mission. She destroys the Orokin. Now, the end of her mission was to then basically complete their destruction by killing all of the Tenno. Unfortunately, she didn't want to. Now, here is where some of the stories, kind of merge, because she actually had some help with how she did this by an Orokin named Margulis. Now, the idea was that through the transference, the Tenno were able to control the warframes. Now, in order to kill a warframe, you have to kill the Tenno controlling it, not the warframe itself. Just because you lop Loki's head off does not mean Loki is dead. Another Loki will appear. So basically the Tenno were sent into the second dream, and the moon itself was then shoved into the void and then held in place by some sort of Orkin device upon the moon's surface that basically held it in that suspension. Did not allow for the moon to fall out of the void. And we know this because of the second Dream quest line, where one of our tasks is actually to shut down that device and bring the moon out of the void. Now, the reason the moon was shoved into the void is because, as I said earlier, the sentients are unable to travel within the void without hurting themselves. Now, in the case of Nata, the damage wasn't exactly noticeable. Basically, her travel from wherever she was sent from to the origin system, she had to come through the void. And it basically sterilized her. She was unable to have children of her own. And so when it came time for her to kill the Tenno, she just couldn't do it. And instead, the Tenno basically became her children. And she, as any mother will tell you, unless you're a psycho, you can't really kill your own kids. It just doesn't sit right within your mind. And so instead, she hid them away in a spot where no sentient could ever do them harm. And that's where the second Dream and Nata quest come in line. And of course, as we know, by the time we finish the second Dream quest, we've pulled the void out, or not the void, we've pulled the moon out of the void. We have found our Tenno selves, and we've brought them back to our orbiter. And as soon as we defeat the Stalker, the Lotus appears in our lander, or not lander, orbiter, my bad, and basically carries our Tenno self to the transference chair. By the way, she also has some great cleavage in that scene, just saying. If you don't believe me, go look it up. Now, before we continue on, if you don't already know, the Lotus herself is actually voiced by D.E. Rebecca. We see her on Primetime and in several of the Thursday and Friday streams that come through every week. Okay, so continuing on. Now, because there are a lot of speculations as to what is actually inside the Warframe and such as things like that, this next part actually kind of makes things a little bit on the weird side. So we have if I'm not mistaken, we have the Hidden Messages quest. And for those that know, that is the one that you get the pieces for Mirage. And during that quest chain, you fight a bunch of infested, and you have some fun, and you just hack and slash. But along the way, you get messages, not only from Ortus after you complete the mission, but during the mission you get messages from the Lotus herself. And she is basically looking at these. Let's see if I can find it here real quick. My apologies. Basically, as you go through these, she finds what she calls a void imprint. It is basically a memory so strong it has become imprinted upon an area. In this case, it has become imprinted upon a ship or a planet. Each place is different, but either way, it activates the Lotus and she starts talking. Now, throughout this quest chain, there are very confusing things. So first, as we get through, we find that Lotus really does love her children. And the way that it looks, Lotus is actually trying to comfort Mirage as she runs out of energy and is basically using her hands and her low-tech weapons to rip the sentients apart. Now, there comes a point where the Lotus basically looks at her. And here is the part from the Calypso survival mission and the infested ship. Lotus basically says, "I'm sensing another void imprint. It's dark. I see the glow of restraints around the warframe. I'm trying to surge the revive system, but I can't. I'm too far away. A great faceted eye watches her. I tell her I won't lose her, that I have another ship on its way. She is smiling because she knows I am lying. Tenno, the second blueprint, has been recovered." Now, from that, there's a bit of confusion. Now, as we already know by the second Dream Quest, the Tenno are not inside the warframes. They control them from a distance. So why is the Lotus so concerned about losing Mirage? And why does the Lotus become so distraught after basically watching Mirage disintegrate during the third part of the quest, to a point where Mirage herself actually tries to console the Lotus as she dies? Now, it could be just the fact that Mirage is an extinct warframe, and that the only way to get this particular warframe is through these void imprints. Um, and that up until this point, no Mirage has ever been seen before, much like that of the Chroma. Chroma was such a rare thing that during those quests, you actually have to scan it and get its parts. Well, now they're part of the junction system, but you still have to do the scans and things of that nature and whatnot in order to retrieve it. And even Cephalon Samaris wants those scans inside the sanctuary because Chroma is so rare. So could it be that the Lotus just didn't want to lose the one and only Mirage? Or is there something deeper that DE just hasn't quite hit upon? That there is something actually inside the Warframe itself that the Lotus is actually showing her affection for? I guess we'll find out in the future. And with that, I leave you off. Have a great day. If you liked the video, please hit the like and subscribe button for some more Warframe. And we'll see you next time. Perhaps we'll do some Ortus stuff next. We'll see what happens. All right, see you later.